So today, we're going to talk about the mind games a narcissist plays to make you doubt your own reality and why it keeps working long after they have stopped playing it. And that is what I want you to take away from today's session. Gaslighting has an internal impact on how you process your own inner world. And once that happens, if you're not aware, this process continues to impact you even if you end the relationship with a toxic person or leave a toxic childhood home. If you were raised by a narcissist or married to one, you've undoubtedly walked out of a conversation unable to explain what just happened. You've saved a text message to prove something to yourself later. You hold on to voicemails and listen to them when you're alone, just to anchor yourself into the reality that you swear was actually reality. In quiet moments, to soften cognitive dissonance, you may have said, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, even though you knew exactly how you remembered it. This brain fog, this mental confusion, this sense that your brain and mind are short-circuiting, it has a name. And we are going to get into it today because you, dear one, cannot love yourself or make decisions in your best interest in these confused states. I'm Lisa A. Romano, a breakthrough life coach, and over my career, I've helped thousands of adult children of dysfunction learn to self-heal from codependency, to break free from narcissistic abuse, and to reprogram their subconscious mind. I help them rewire the subconscious mind so they can align with self-love, respect, confidence, and authenticity despite a painful past. So please understand that gaslighting is not just one big lie. It is 1,000 small corrections. And by the end, they no longer have to correct you. I want to explain that. So here's how gaslighting digs deep into your subconscious and what you can begin to do about it. Number one, they deny something you watched happen. Now, imagine that you are 7 years old. You're standing in the doorway of your kitchen. Your father is shouting, he's throwing a ball across the room, and the ceramic shatters against the wall. The sound rings in your ears, and your chest tightens with fear. An hour later, the room is swept clean, dinner is served on the table, and your mother hands you a plate with a calm, pleasant smile, asking about whether you finished your homework. When you whisper, "Is Daddy still mad?" she looks at you with a blank, slightly concerned expression and says, "Mad? What are you talking about? Daddy's fine. Stop making things up. If you keep talking like that, Daddy really will get mad." The terrifying event you just witnessed with your own eyes and heard with your own ears was completely erased in a single breath. Now, here's why it works on a child so innocently. A child's brain relies entirely on caretakers for safety, structure, and a baseline definition of reality. When a parent completely ignores or denies an event that just took place, the child faces a terrifying psychological conflict. Either their parents are untrustworthy and unsafe, or the child's own senses are wrong. And because a child's survival depends on believing the parents are safe, the brain defaults to self-doubt. The nervous system learns to shut down its internal alarm system, suppressing natural gut instincts to maintain attachment to the caregiver. Over time, this wire crosses your intuition, teaching you to trust someone else's distorted narrative over your direct lived experience. Below the veil of consciousness, the silent dynamic becomes directly tied to survival. Operating entirely on autopilot, the young mind learns that speaking up or honoring its own truth threatens the attachment bond. And to a dependent child, losing that bond feels like literal death. Over time, this subconscious program manifests as codependency, chronic self-erasure, and an inability to speak up on behalf of the authentic self. So you learn to silence your own voice because your brain has conditioned you to believe that authenticity is dangerous. Now, this leaves you trapped in adult relationships where staying safe means you abandon who you truly are. Now, here's the coaching tip I want to give you. Here's how you reestablish a connection to your inner reality. When you notice this pattern playing out in your adult life, actionable self-coaching comes into play. Coaching is about identifying a core issue in your day-to-day life right now and developing practical, realistic steps to correct it bit by bit. It's not about overanalyzing or pathologizing. Coaching is about changing patterns. It's about change and transformation. So here is the coaching tip for the day on taking back your power when it comes to owning your reality. The moment an incident happens, when you notice your reality is being questioned, just pause, don't react. Just see the pattern and immediately document the objective facts in a private journal or secure a voice note before anyone has the chance to reframe what you saw. Now, instead of trying to debate or convince someone who refuses to acknowledge the truth, dear one, shift your focus inward and anchor yourself in your physical body. Your body knows the truth. Pay attention to your physical sensations, like a racing heart or a knot in your stomach, because your nervous system recognizes the pattern long before your conscious mind tries to rationalize it away to soften cognitive dissonance. Your nervous system may also be in the habit of people-pleasing or fawning or giving up because it squelches fear. But that only keeps you stuck. We want a breakthrough. Finally, practice stepping away from the need for external agreement or validation or approval. Grounding yourself in your own truth means taking small, deliberate steps every day to trust your own perception without needing the person who denied it to ever agree with you. Now, in the end, it is more of a breakthrough for you to decide to agree to disagree on reality than it is to continually give up your own or stay confused. Number 2, they keep correcting small things until you stop trusting your own memory. Now, imagine an aging mother, Margaret, living on a fixed income, whose adult son, Mark, moves back in under the guise of taking care of her, helping her out. It starts with a tiny, almost imperceptible micro-correction. Margaret hands him a check for his portion of the utility bill and says, "Here is the $150 we talked about." Mark looks at her with a gentle smile, a pitying smile, and shakes his head and says, "Mom, we agreed on $200. Remember? We sat right at the kitchen table yesterday." Margaret blinks, she second-guesses herself, and hands over the extra cash. A few days later, she talks about her doctor's appointment on Thursday, and he says, "No, Mom, it's Tuesday. Your memory's really slipping lately, isn't it?" "Don't worry, I'm here to keep track of things for you." He isn't yelling or throwing a massive lie at her. He is softly rewriting a low-stakes detail day after day. Soon, Margaret stops checking her bank statements, gives him control over her accounts, and defers to him on every decision because she is convinced her mind is failing. And here's why the small corrections do more damage than one big, massive lie. So a massive lie acts like a sudden flare. It alerts your defense mechanism. If someone tells you that the sky is neon green, your brain immediately flags the statement as absurd and rejects it. But a micro-correction acts like a psychological erosion tactic. They target irrelevant details: what time you left the house, where you put your keys, what word you used in a sentence, things your brain naturally doesn't hold on to with high priority. When someone constantly alters these tiny details with absolute confidence, your mind begins to internalize a subtle message: my perception is unreliable. This slow drip of self-doubt wears away your confidence far more effectively than a single dramatic deception. Over time, your brain gets exhausted from second-guessing itself. It gives up its internal anchor and surrenders authority to the manipulator. Now, here's how you get your reality back. Here's how you reestablish a connection to your true inner reality, something that you want to hold on to. When you notice this pattern playing out in your adult life, the actionable step comes into play. And here is your coaching tip to reclaim yourself. First, refuse to debate low-stakes details. When someone tries to correct a minor inconsequential detail about your past, do not waste your time arguing. Practice using neutral, grounding phrases like, "I remember it differently, but I'm not going to debate it," or simply, "My memory works just fine," or "Okay, got it, I see what you're trying to say here." You're not agreeing with their perception. You're simply saying, "Got it, I hear you." Second, keep an objective paper trail. If you're dealing with financial, legal, or logistical matters with someone who micro-corrects you, move everything into written form. Send text or email confirmations, keep a calendar log, and review your own notes before accepting someone else's version of reality or events. If you notice that this person consistently questions your memory, do what you can to write down the details: who you spoke to and when, what the conversation was about, and any follow-up information that might be important. And if possible, find a neutral person that you trust and share those details with that person so that your reality is less likely to get distorted. Having a third party that you can trust to help you recall events will be a great advantage to you holding on to your inner reality. And finally, separate certainty from consensus. You do not need another person to agree with your memory for it to be valid. Get in the habit of not looking to the micro-corrector for validation, and their ability to rewrite your reality completely loses its power. My powerful coaching metacognitive tip for today is give them permission to dismiss your reality. Just let them have it. Number 3, they tell you that you are too sensitive and you start to believe them. As a child, my mother mocked me when I cried, and my father mocked my brother terribly. I was called the drama queen, the attention seeker, and was called Sandra Bernhardt, and I had no idea who that was. I just knew it meant my feelings were wrong, and they ticked my mother off. And my dad would call my brother a sissy and a baby if he cried. He would slap him in the back of the head with disgust as thick tears hung in the cradle of his inner eye. And we were powerless little children against my parents, and we were dependent upon them for survival. My inner reality, my emotions and perceptions, thoughts, wants, and needs threatened my sense of safety. And so, to reduce the chance of more pain, I learned to suppress my emotions. Inside, I was a rumbling volcano. As a child, I had boils under my arms that I never told my mom about. My lower legs had blisters and ulcerations I hid with those high white tube socks when we were kids. I suffered from stomach issues. I could not eat without having to go to the bathroom immediately. Being brainwashed to fear speaking my truth cost me physically. It cost me relationally and spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. And here is the neurological challenge of a dismissed child. When caregivers mock or dismiss a child's natural emotional responses, the brain faces a devastating conflict. To a young child, emotional expression is a primary bid for safety and connection. Now, when that bid is met with ridicule or disgust, the developing nervous system registers the threat of emotional abandonment as a threat to physical survival itself. To adapt, the brain's prefrontal cortex steps in to forcibly suppress the limbic system's emotional signals before they can be expressed outwardly. This chronic subconscious inhibition keeps the body's threat response constantly activated. You're constantly stressed because the emotional energy and stress hormones have no safe outward outlet. The body absorbs the impact, often manifesting physically as gastrointestinal issues, skin conditions, and chronic somatic pain. Below the veil of consciousness, the brain learns that authentic self-expression is dangerous to your survival, wiring the nervous system to choose self-erasure over the threat of rejection. Now, here's a tip on how to reestablish a connection to your inner reality. When you notice this pattern playing out, and it's just a pattern in your adult life, remember this is just a subconscious pattern your nervous system has learned to associate with survival. The goal is to see the pattern, interrupt the pattern, and then reprogram the pattern. So here's your coaching tip for the day on reconnecting to your authentic self. Start by giving your nervous system permission to feel physical sensations without rushing to judge or suppress them. The moment you feel emotional distress or bodily tension, pause and name the sensation neutrally. Whether it's a knot in your stomach or a tightness in your chest, just name it. Gently state to yourself, my feelings are real data, not drama, and it is safe for me to let my body feel this right now. Taking a few slow grounding breaths signals to your nervous system that speaking and honoring your internal truth no longer threatens your survival. This is breaking the pattern. If you are recognizing yourself in some of this, if you resonate with self-erasure while some part of you is rushing to explain it away, that pull has a name. It's codependency. You might find yourself minimizing what happened or defending the people who hurt you simply because your nervous system learned a long time ago that keeping the peace by apologizing, by making everything your fault was the only way to stay safe. In that state, you can't recognize that this is actually a narcissist's mind game. Over 50,000 people have taken my free codependency quiz to see whether codependency is quietly impacting their relationships and keeping them from living a fulfilled, empowered, autonomous life. And you can take it for free. The link is in the description box below. Number 4, they push until you react. Then they point at your reaction. Imagine this. Night after night, your partner says that they'll be home by 5 o'clock. You shop, you cook, you set the table, and you have the meal warm and ready. 5 o'clock becomes 6 o'clock, and then 7, and they finally walk through the door. And this isn't the first time. It's a predictable chronic pattern. On an ordinary Thursday night, exhausted and hurt, you finally address it. You ask, where have you been? Why didn't you answer my texts? I've been calling you. Now, instead of an apology, they look at you with cool detachment and say, why are you so angry? What's wrong with you? You're acting completely crazy right now. They know they are 2 hours late. They know they ignored your messages, but they refuse to acknowledge any of it. They remain disturbingly calm, which makes your pulse race even faster. They sit down, they chomp on a cold piece of chicken, and casually add, this tastes salty. How much salt did you use? Now your blood boils. An explosion of anger erupts out of you. The moment you react, they win. The focus instantly shifts from their chronic disrespect to how unhinged you are acting, making your emotional outburst the official evidence of your supposed instability. And here's why being ignored makes you so angry. The brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, processes relational dismissiveness and invalidation as a direct threat to safety. When someone ignores your voice, breaks a boundary, and then acts like nothing happened, your brain interprets this dynamic as a form of social erasure. The intense rage you feel isn't just frustration over dinner. It is an instinctual neurobiological defense against being rendered invisible. When the manipulator responds with cold composure, it triggers a profound neurocognitive contradiction. Your nervous system is flooded with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, but the person causing the distress is showing zero physiological activation. This mismatch forces your brain into overdrive, trying to bridge the gap between what you are experiencing and what is being projected at you. The sudden surge of anger is your nervous system's desperate attempt to force the other person to acknowledge your reality. The tragedy is that the calm manipulator uses your high arousal response to position themselves as the rational one, successfully diverting attention away from their original offense. Now, here's how you begin to break the pattern, to reestablish a connection to your inner reality. To do this, you have to be aware it's when you're being triggered. When you notice this pattern playing out in your adult life, when you're being minimized, when they're rewriting history, your greatest win is staying above the veil of consciousness and noticing the sensations that well up in your body as these dynamics begin to unfold. There's nothing to do with them. So here's your coaching tip for the day on breaking this reactive cycle. Shift your goal from getting them to acknowledge their behavior to maintaining control over your own emotional state. The moment you feel the physical signs of reactive rage, a tight chest, a racing heart, or a surging urge to yell, recognize that your reaction is the exact prize they are fishing for. Instead of taking the bait, adopt a strategy of strategic neutrality. State the facts once in a low, even tone. For example, dinner was at 5 and it's now 7. I'm going to put the food away and move on with my evening. Then physically remove yourself from the room before an argument ensues or begins. By you withholding the reaction they expect, you're breaking the cycle, you're protecting your nervous system from unnecessary dysregulation, and you keep the accountability exactly where it belongs. Now, some of the unhealthiest people in the world will not stop there. They want to play the emotional manipulative game, where they poke you in the eye, you poke them back, and they get to call you crazy when they deny that they poked you in the eye. Now, the key is to understand you must jump off the chessboard. Even if they poke you, even if they provoke you, you must not fuel them with a reaction. That reaction is their aim, and they use it to keep the spotlight on you and your behavior versus their actions. Number 5, they tell you that nobody will believe you. One of the statements my ex used on me often was, even your own mother calls you a liar. Now, it stopped me dead in my tracks more times than I care to remember. Looking back, that statement should have been one of the major clues that I was in a toxic relationship, because anybody who weaponizes your oldest childhood wounds against you is somebody who completely lacks empathy. They can't see you. They need to feel in absolute control of the relationship much more than they care about feeling genuinely connected to you. Their ego wants to run the show, not their heart. So phrases or insinuations like this land with crushing force because it bypasses your logical mind and it hits the unhealed childhood wound of being discredited by the very person who is supposed to protect you. What it stops you from doing is speaking your truth. It freezes you in your tracks, making you pull back, shut down, and keep your mouth shut out of terrifying fear of being exposed, ridiculed, or rejected all over again. And here is why your brain freezes when a manipulator insinuates that no one will believe you or you are unbelievable. This is the neuropsychological impact that helps you understand what is happening at the subconscious level and hopefully helps you set free. Someone says something like, even your own mother calls you a liar, or no one will believe you. It isn't just a harsh insult. It's a psychological flash bang. Your brain doesn't process those words through your rational prefrontal cortex. It processes them through the amygdala, the threat detection center of your brain. If your childhood brain was conditioned to associate a parent's invalidation with the direct threat to your emotional survival, hearing that wound weaponized in adulthood instantly triggers a subconscious freeze response. This freeze isn't a conscious choice. It is your nervous system taking over to protect you. Now, below the veil of consciousness, your brain instantly links speaking your truth in that moment with the catastrophic pain of childhood abandonment. And to keep you safe from that perceived danger, your nervous system hijacks your body, flooding you with stress chemicals and shutting down your ability to articulate your reality. It isn't that you're weak or that you don't want to stand up for yourself. It is your subconscious mind operating on an outdated survival script, convincing you that silence is the only way to stay safe. So here's your subconscious reprogramming coaching tip, one that will help you interrupt the freeze response. When you notice this pattern playing out in your adult life, pause. Notice the weapon the person is using and immediately call it out. This interrupts the mind from freezing and even fawning. It keeps you aware and above the veil. Below the veil, the pattern runs through the default mode network, and we don't want that. Immediately recognize that the paralyzing urge to stay silent is an automatic reaction from your past, not a reflection of your present power. The moment someone uses an old wound to discredit you, and you feel that sudden freeze in your chest, pause and take one slow, deep breath. Mentally separate the past from the present by reminding yourself, that was my childhood wound, but I'm an adult now, and my truth does not depend on anyone else's validation. I can see the weapon being used here, and from above the veil, it has no power over me. By stepping back to ground your nervous system in the present moment, you stop operating on automatic subconscious conditioning and give yourself the safety required to honor your voice. This is you activating metacognitive intelligence, and from this space, you can take a deep breath, you can smile, you can shutty, and ask them to pass the butter. Passing the butter is simply you acknowledging that you see what they're trying to do, and your focus is now on the fact that they are trying to manipulate you, and you're not going to freeze because of it. Number 6, there's somebody else in public and you pay the cost. One of the most common complaints I hear from my clients is, Lisa, no one sees what I see. Everyone thinks he's amazing. Everyone thinks he's charming, and everybody thinks he's generous, but I know the truth. He's only nice to gain something. Even his kindness is performative, and it's all about him, not the other person. He is so different with me. This makes me doubt myself when I feel so alone. Now, being the only witness to that second phase comes at a staggering emotional cost. In public, they wear the polished armor of being possibly the pillar of the community, the devoted partner, or the selfless friend. But behind closed doors, the mask drops and you're met with cold indifference, subtle cruelty, or explosive rage. You being the sole custodian of the other side of their hidden personality leaves you feeling completely isolated, like you're living in a parallel universe where your lived experience is completely erased by who they pretend to be in public. And here is why being the only witness causes such psychological exhaustion. When someone maintains two completely different personas, it forces your brain to navigate a relentless state of cognitive dissonance. Your nervous system craves consistency to feel safe. When the person who is warm and attentive in front of dinner guests turns cold and punitive the moment the front door closes, your nervous system is thrown into high alarm. And because the rest of the world continually validates their charm, your mind begins to turn inward with toxic self-doubt. Below the veil of consciousness, your brain tries to make sense of this gap by thinking, if everyone else thinks they're wonderful, I must be the problem. Now, this dynamic keeps you trapped in a looping hypervigilant state, endlessly analyzing your own behavior to figure out why you are the only one receiving their harshness, while carrying the immense loneliness of holding a truth that no one else seems to see. Here's a subconscious reprogramming coaching tip to help you reestablish a connection to your inner reality. Decide that you will stop looking to public opinion to validate your private internal experience. Recognize that a manipulator's public persona is a calculated strategy designed to build social immunity so that if you ever speak up, you're the one who looks unhinged. Imagine a giant red X every time you feel compelled to tell the truth to another person about your perception of the person they only know one side of. Place your hand on your heart and surrender. Give others permission to view this person as they see fit. Detach and let go, holding on to what you feel is true without placing the burden of validation in someone else's hands. This is you taking back your power. When you feel that desperate urge to unmask them or convince others of who they really are, pause, take a deep breath, and bring your focus back to yourself. And remind yourself, I don't need a jury to confirm what I experienced to be real. I see the mask, I see the game, and it has no power over my truth. Release the burden of trying to prove to the world and step into the quiet power of trusting your own eyes and honoring your own reality. Number 7, you own your power, you take over, and they don't play it anymore. I remember during my separation, my ex would say to me over and over again, Nanny would do a better job raising our children than you. And all the kids have to do is get away from you and they'll just be fine. And those words cut right to the core of me. They poke directly at the deep-seated unworthiness I carried in my gut as a codependent and an adult child of emotional neglect. There was a time when I secretly wondered if he was right, because nobody had ever told me I was a good enough mother. So how could I know for sure that I was? And without that external validation, his words planted a seed of terrifying doubt in my mind. It was a very painful time for him, for me, and especially our children. He was losing control. He was losing his power, and he was losing the life he had imagined slipping right through his fingers. But I was in the middle of doing the deep recovery work, thank heaven. I was learning how to stand on my own 2 emotional feet. I was applying codependency recovery tools every day to my life, and I was creating methods to help me stay grounded while my world was falling apart. I began taking my power back, holding my own boundaries, taking accountability, and honoring my perceptions and my need for safety, respect, and love, even when everything in my life felt like it was coming completely undone. Every tack, every nail, staple, and thread was out of place. And the day it all changed for me, I was at work as a personal trainer, coaching clients one-to-one. My flip phone started blowing up with dozens of text messages, and one more insulting than the next. And suddenly, right there in that room, my recovery tools kicked in, and it hit me. This is the game. Me texting him back, him knowing he upset me, him feeding off my energy and my reactions. He was going to feel elated if I called or texted back, and empowered if I tried to defend myself. So I looked at the phone and I realized if I text him back, I'm the one sticking my finger straight into an electrical socket. He couldn't force me to text back. So I slammed that flip phone shut and threw it in my locker and walked out onto the gym floor to train my personal client. And that was the day I came up with Shutty Shutty. But here's the thing. I did catch myself wanting to text him back. I could feel the old codependent pattern and the urge rising up in my body to defend myself, and maybe even to get him to see how his words were hurting me. But instead of acting on it, I brought the pattern above the veil of consciousness and I said out loud, "Not today." And here's why your subconscious mind eventually takes over their mind games. In the beginning, they're the ones playing the mind game on you. But over time, below the veil of consciousness, your brain adopts their voice as your own, as its own internal operating system. So you start to internalize the invalidation so deeply that the manipulator doesn't even have to be in the room anymore. Your own subconscious mind takes over the job. You become the one correcting yourself before anyone else can. You start every sentence off with, well, maybe I'm wrong, or you second guess yourself, or you doubt your worthiness. You doubt your worth as a parent or a partner or a person when nobody else is even there. When you get triggered, your nervous system experiences an automatic impulse to explain, defend, and react, because your old survival conditioning tells you that defending yourself is how you stay safe. But reacting to a manipulator is like handing them the remote control to your nervous system. The moment you activate higher consciousness and bring that subconscious habit into your conscious awareness, you realize something incredibly powerful. You are the one holding the phone, and they cannot make you argue, defend, or text back. So here is your subconscious reprogramming coaching tip for the day on breaking that loop. Catch yourself in the act of taking the bait. The next time you receive a toxic text or an insulting comment and you feel that sudden urge to defend yourself, pause. Recognize that the urge to reply is just a physical impulse moving through your nervous system. It's not an instruction you have to follow. You don't have to do anything with it. And that may be the hardest pattern interrupt and nervous system upgrade of all. Say out loud to yourself, "Not today." Close the phone, walk away from the screen, or step out of the room. Give yourself explicit permission to leave their comments unaddressed. Remind yourself that silence is not submission. Silence is you keeping your power, practicing recovery tools, and refusing to stick your finger back into the electrical socket. Remember, every toxic person is playing a game, and your job is to stay off the board. If you found yourself in a few of these, dear one, stay with me, because number 7 is the whole game. The first 6 are things somebody did to you. The 7th is the one that kept you going even after you ended that narcissistic relationship. You corrected yourself before anybody else had to. You soften what you know you know. You begin every sentence off with "maybe I'm wrong." And there's nobody in the room. You apologizing, you fawning, it's not a character flaw. That is a job somebody handed you when you were too small to refuse it, and you've been doing it ever since without pay and without noticing it consciously. Well, you can put it down now. But you cannot put down something that you cannot see yourself doing, and that is the whole problem with this one. If this work resonates with you, please check out the 12-Week Breakthrough Coaching Program. This is a program or framework specifically created for adult children of alcoholics and adult children of narcissistic parents who grew up feeling emotionally neglected, who grew up feeling invisible, unseen, and unheard, and they're running out those patterns today. It is level 1 of the Above the Veil method and is how I teach people to change the survival codes that they were raised on. I will teach you how to reparent yourself. I will teach you how to rewrite the subconscious programs running underneath your life. I will give you the tools that you needed then and you need now to break free, the ones you deserved in childhood, to help you become the master of your life, the authority of your own life, a cycle breaker, and a better parent too if you have children. And please, if you're in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, never assume it's too late. It was never you. It was only your programming, and programming can be corrected. Over 5,000 adult children across all of my courses and community are learning to self-heal and come back to your authentic self, and you can too. The link is in the description box below, and I hope to see you on the inside. Namaste, everybody. Until next time. Bye for now.